Okay, everybody. So today we have a very special guest. His name is Jeroen Corthout. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Is that right? Or
Kinda, yeah.
hopefully. And Jeroen is basically a co-founder of Salesflare, which is a simple but powerful CRM tool. So welcome, Jeroen. And
Yeah.
just as a disclaimer, I am a Salesflare customer in my company,
hmm
but I would definitely love to learn more about you guys, how you basically developed Salesflare and what are your plans for the future. So maybe you can start off by telling us a bit about the product. What is actually Salesflare for people who haven't heard
hmm
about it? And then what is your product, obviously, and just a little background info.
Yeah. So we started Salesflare in 2014. When my co-founder and I we were working together on this intelligence software company. It doesn't matter. It was a software company, and we came back from a conference and we had a lot of leads, and we were trying to organize it very well, like the way we would follow them up. Um, and what we found is that it was very difficult actually to do this in a productive way. So we tried a few systems. We actually ended up in a Google Sheet. I had been using Salesforce before. I knew it was not a system with which you can organize your sales follow-up practically. It's a very nice system to build kind of like business processes in a big company and report to your manager. But if you try to use it to stay on top of your customers, like what did you discuss when, what's the status of it, what's the next thing to do, Salesforce is really not so nice to use. Um, and we were thinking even a bit beyond the systems we saw, because we figured like all this work we're doing to know all these things uh, is a bit silly, because the emails we're sending are already in our email system. Um, the calls we're making are in our phone. The meetings we're having are in our calendar. These people they have like data here and there that we keep uh, taking together. Like we get an email signature, we copy the phone number from the email signature into the contact, all this kind of stuff. Like that can be automatically done. Social media databases, company databases. We thought like, what if we could like build a system that very dynamically and automatically pulls all this information together, so that you don't have to do it as a salesperson anymore, which then takes away a lot of your work, makes that you know your customers better, and it solves one of the major issues with CRM, is that CRM doesn't work because salespeople just fail at some point. Salespeople or startup founders or whatever. Um, if you don't have the discipline to always fill it very nicely, and that discipline you could have it at some point, but at some point you start failing, then the system becomes a bit less useful,
Mm-hmm.
because you're relying on it for the information about your customers, but the system relies on you to actually put it in first. So our vision was a system that would take that all away, and then a system that also, on top of the data that it automatically collects, that also starts automating things. So you could start automating your emails and all those kind of things. That's a lot of things we're building right now. Also, I mean, we keep stacking on top of that.
Got it. And what's your background? Are you coming from like a sales or marketing background or more like software development?
I come from a marketing background professionally. I've been doing marketing before Salesflare for about 6 years, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And sales in a way, because the job that I've done the longest was being an account manager at a marketing agency.
Mm-hmm.
So you see the marketing and the sales, but by education I'm an engineer.
Nice.
But
That's a good kind of split you have across all these three kind of disciplines because I had Steli after he runs Close Eye on the podcast and he comes from the
mhm,
sales background. It's definitely a better kind of advantage that if you want to compete with like Pipedrive, but it's all founded by technical guys, right? So they don't have that maybe insight that he might have to create a better product. So maybe the other question would be when should a company implement a CRM? I mean, you've mentioned you need to kind of be consistent, even with or without Salesflare, but is it at the point where you're doing kind of active selling, or at least like prospecting, or is it even at the point where you're just starting out as a startup, or when you're kind of having your first couple of customers? So when's the point to implement the CRM and remove yourself from Google Sheets? Because Google Sheets are sometimes much better. So when should you implement a CRM?
As soon as it makes sense, obviously. That's not an answer to your question. That's just no. I would advocate for as soon as possible. And you might not be selling at that point. But let's say you start off with customer interviews. Customer interviews and all the follow-up around that, it works way better in a CRM than it does in a Google Sheet, a good CRM at least. If your CRM is not as good as a Google Sheet, get something else. But you do customer interviews, you start looking for your first investors perhaps. You're starting to talk about like maybe partnerships, maybe that's too early. All these kind of things can be organized in a CRM. It's not just the sales part, but obviously also from the stage behind the customer interviews, I think the first thing you should do is selling. And then it totally makes sense to have a CRM. Even if you envision a sort of self-guided onboarding process in the longer run, I think it makes sense in the beginning of your startup to first start with talking to people as much as possible, guiding them by the hand, and doing the whole sales process manually as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the big problem is in the agency space. So whether that's a marketing agency or a software house, almost a very, very small number of them have actually CRM systems, and they are pretty big. Sometimes they even have like 50 people on board without any CRM. They don't track anything. So, and they do like massive revenue. So like that to me is crazy. So it's just about that as well. Like even because they get deals through referrals or their network, so they don't really care about implementing a CRM. However, in the complex sales cycle and ton of follow-up, I would definitely recommend. I know there's a lot of IT guys listening who have software houses, so definitely recommend implementing some sort of system for that.
Well, so some companies, like if you're talking about agencies, they have like, let's say every account manager does 1 or 2 accounts. But then we're talking about big companies. I was doing big companies and I had 5, 6 accounts. Still, I would have preferred to have something that would actually help me with following up my customers. So I didn't have to do it in all these separate systems next to each other. But the pain is less big. If you just have a few, the pain is less big. We had Salesforce internally, and then, well, it was not needed for let's say practical follow-up purposes. It was only needed to make sure that the guys in the Netherlands would not talk to the same company without knowing that we were talking to them in Belgium or this kind of thing.
And so back in 2014, who came up with the first version of Salesflare? Where did you code it yourself, or how did that work out?
We actually didn't code from the start. We had read Getting Real. I think that's the only book I ever considered, convinced my co-founder to read. It was Getting Real by 37 Signals. And they were advocating for doing like the least amount of work you could do to validate something. So the first thing we did was 2 things. We made a deck about Salesflare, and we made a prototype. And it was actually a static prototype that did nothing, but we could show it to people like on our phones, like, oh, look, and then you do this and then that, and then this goes there, and then people, that's interesting. What's the idea behind? So we could talk with a lot of people. And based on these two things, we got in one incubator and one accelerator very quickly. We had a lot of conversations with people, and it helped us to make the right first connections and get a good idea of what we were building. And it was only after 5-6 months, I think. Took a long time. Mainly, I was also still working part-time. It was when we got in our first accelerator that we decided to go full-time, and that's when we started developing as well. And that was then my co-founder, together with someone we hired, our first employee, who's still with us, who we hired on the first 25k euros we got. That started developing Salesflare. It's all built in-house.
I was wondering about that. Did you raise a seed round for the 25k, or was it like your own, your money from the co-founders and stuff like that?
We got it from the accelerator. It was sort of a grant we got that gave them an option to maybe invest in the next part. It was an accelerator by a big telecom company here in Belgium.
Got it. Because I noticed on the Crunchbase that in 2018, in May or March, there's like a seed round of, I think, 300 or something K. So what was that like for you, if that is considered a seed round right now? And what are you planning to do? What have you done with that, seed round? Maybe have you invested more into the product or your team size, or what is kind of happening for Salesflare from that point on?
Yeah, it's sort of a seed/angel round, and it wasn't really like done in 2018. It was spread over 2017, 2018, because we did a convertible round with different business angels. But this is only a small part of the money we raised, because we also raised subsidies. It's a very good source of money if you're doing innovative stuff in Europe. We got bank money to bridge certain phases. We got some accelerator money. We got this 25k, but also 50k from another accelerator. And we used these things to build Salesflare, first of all, and secondly to start building up our sort of inbound machine for Salesflare. It's a lot of building both on the technical and the business side.
Got it. And so how big is the team at Salesflare right now?
It's currently 7. So there's 3 developers and my co-founder who's working also on the development team, leading it more and testing and all this kind of stuff. 1 person in marketing, 1 person in support, and myself.
Got it. And so with the CRM business, it's not an easy business, right? There's kind of huge players in enterprise space, then you have kind of mid-market players, and you're probably targeting like a small businesses, or rather smaller companies like myself maybe. So like who is your actually customer for Salesforce? Maybe that's going to change obviously, but why did you also decide to, I know the reason why you built Salesforce, but maybe did you want to go into this CRM business like in 2014? Did you imagine it how it is like now, or what's kind of your, when you look back 5 years ago, how did it change this entire industry?
Well, one of the slides you would find in our first deck had like, how Salesforce has software with a thing over it. We had CRM and then the same thing, because we believed that CRM was not working and everybody hated it. So at some point we decided we were building a sales platform, and actually we thought about targeting bigger companies and build a sales platform that would connect with the CRM, and it would solve their issue of salespeople not using the CRM. And a bunch of companies were quite receptive to the idea, but actually selling it was very hard. And at the same time, I came from a smaller company. We were surrounded by smaller companies, and actually all those people were interested, much more interested in the big company. And then we figured as well that we were building a practical system. And the difference, if a CRM system is bought by a small or a large company, is that a large company will throw you a list of specifications. They'll be like, does it do this and this and this and this and this and this? And then I'm like, yes, it does this and this and this and this, but this it doesn't do. And then they're like, yeah, I don't know. And often even it goes that far that I say, okay, based on what I see here, you need an enterprise CRM. You could go with something like Salesforce or Microsoft Dynamics or whatever, but this doesn't fit in a small business CRM. And it's not just for Salesflare, that's for our competitors too. What we build is a practical thing that is bought by the end users almost. I mean, or someone that is very close to the end users, and that wants something that works, not something that, I mean, works again practically, and not for the organization. It's not a business process kind of tool. It's really a sales tool.
Yeah, I guess it's mostly for managers in those enterprise companies, because actually,
They buy it.
yeah, one of my family members, he actually is a sales director at this big company, and they use Salesforce, and he told me like how many fake reports they are doing because it's like impossible to keep track of it, and it's like like nobody fills it up, but the upper management thinks it's still really cool, but like the entire department is just not actually updating the data, and they're just making up some reports. So it is very not user friendly, I would say. And as I come from a sales background, I was a sales guy, and I hated every CRM I had, and I kept Google Sheets everywhere because none of them was kind of intuitive. And actually, Salesflare is my first CRM that I don't use it anymore, but my salespeople use it as well. So it's pretty cool. And so how many? Sorry.
Happy to hear that at least we're hitting our goal a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And so how many users do you guys have right now, if you can share that?
I think our inactive users were a bit above 2,000. I'm not sure. I need to check the numbers, but it's above 2,000.
Yeah, I noticed that you have a pricing package like $30 and €30. So how did you come up with that? Because it's usually, you have like €30 and then, I don't know, $35, but I think you have 30 and 30.
Simplicity. I don't know. We just figured we can work with the exchange rates and then update it all the time, or decide that the exchange rate between the two is a certain thing or whatever, or we can do like Apple and sell it for the same price in euros and dollars.
Got it. And so with Salesflare, I mean, it's pretty intuitive. There's an extension that we can use on top of Gmail that can basically take the entire conversation into Salesflare without copying and all that. Because I think the biggest kind of block for salespeople using any kind of CRM is data entry and admin work. There's nothing worse than I can do in my time doing data entry. It's pointless. And so I think that's where Salesforce does the really good job in terms of getting those data into
the plugin.
Yeah, definitely.
Did you know that actually the very first product was an Outlook and a Gmail plugin and a mobile version. We did not have a desktop version because we believe that it's stupid for salespeople to at one time be in their email program and then at the other moment switch to a tab where they're doing CRM and then switch one way and the other way. And there's a lot of CRM systems, and we also have it now that have in-app emailing. But we believe that is secondary. Like CRM will not take over the role of Gmail, for instance. It's nice that sometimes you're in the CRM and you can send something, but it's much nicer if you're in Gmail and you actually have all your CRM stuff there. So that's why we built it first that way, and we didn't have a desktop version. I mean, like a full screen thing for I think about a year or so. until people really started saying like, okay, we like your thing, but all these other CRMs, they also have this like full screen thing. They're like, okay, we can make that as well.
Got it. And so like the core feature is also the pipeline, right? So like how do you, I know there are some predefined steps, but what do you recommend for companies? I know everybody has a different process. And what I like about Salesforce as well is that you can split your pipeline into like monthly recurring revenue, which we did have, and then like one-time deals. So what do you see from your like user base? How do they usually, what steps in the sales process do they define? Because for somebody, a lead is, I don't know, somebody who requests more information or somebody who you just found on LinkedIn. So what do you think is the proper way to set up your pipeline?
The default pipeline we have is like leads. It's someone you want to contact. It's a good lead. And then there's contacted. You've contacted them. Then there's qualified. When you actually consider them a lead to which you can sell. So there's a few things you need to qualify there, whether they have budget, whether you're talking to the right person, whether they need what you're offering, whether there's a definite timeline or it's actually one day that they wanted. It just, those are like the band criteria, the ones that IBM came up with once. But the basic idea is like, is this someone who buy my software or my product, whatever. I sometimes tend to put another stage in between, because between contacted and qualified can be a big gap. So add a stage like interested or something. So at least you know that they're interested, but you don't know yet whether they're a good, whether they're qualified. Then typically when you work with proposals, it's something like proposal made. If you have trials, it could be trial. And then there's sometimes people add something like contract signed or so, because it's contract signed, but it's not, or I mean, or contract sent, whatever. It's like it's a little step in between. And then it's won or lost. And won is when you close the deal. Lost is at any point when, for instance, someone is not qualified, then it's best to drag them to lost. I mean, it's a lost deal. You're not going to do anything with it anymore, so gone. And then what you could optionally add as well behind lost is a fridge, because some deals, it's not the right timing. It's like a good lead, it's qualified, but you feel that it's not right now. It's maybe at the end of the year or something, and then you can put them in the fridge for a bit.
Okay, that makes sense. I haven't heard that fridge idea before. So is that like what is that? Should I create a new kind of metric in the opportunity phase and then put it behind lost? Is that what you're saying?
A stage. Yeah. You can make a stage, put it behind lost, and then give it the probability 0% maybe as well, so that it's not counted into your pipeline, because it's not in your pipeline right now, but you still want to leave it there for a bit. And then now and then go through this list of opportunities in the fridge, or even put tasks on them to follow them up at a certain time, and then that way you can you don't have to drag them to lost if they're not really lost.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's always depend on the company setup. Like for example, I'm looking at my Salesforce setup, and I have a lead stage. But for us, a lead is actually somebody who engaged with us, not who is just like somebody found, because there's thousands of people we can serve. So this wouldn't make sense for us. And then we have meeting set, because there's a difference from somebody who's interested and then actually meeting with you and looking at the conversion. And then we have qualified, which is if we meet with them and they fit the qualification stage, then there's proposal presented, negotiation, marketing assessment done, which is a stage before the campaign starts. Takes about 3 weeks. It's almost 99% done deal at that point. And then it's won. So I guess it depends if you're an agency or startup or whatever. But this fridge idea is pretty cool. What I usually do, I follow up on every lost deal. I create a task to follow up like in 3 months, and I put them in a specific sequence to like nurture
Right.
every 2 weeks with some content,
Mhm.
something like to just keep on top of mind, even though they are not interested now. Because I had deals where after 3 months the guy came back and we closed the deal just because I kept following up, and they were
Mhm.
lost. So I guess
Cool.
you can set it up according to your kind of company sales process, but you must have a sales process before, and that's very important. Many companies miss that point. So how do you basically, you've mentioned Salesflare. So what's the future for you guys at Salesflare? What do you want to become as a CRM? Do you want to go more upstream, or do you want to stay in this zone and kind of cover? Because I think your biggest competitor is still Google Sheet, at least from my perspective. I don't know if maybe there's
Um,
much of these tools, but what's your kind of future in like 2 years or 3 years?
yeah, Google Sheets is probably and things like Trello.
Hmm.
It's the most horrible thing to migrate from
Yeah, many of our
because
clients use Trello actually, so yeah, that's true.
yeah, the issue is with Trello that if you then want to migrate to a CRM, your data is even worse off than in Google Sheets because it's
Hmm.
not
Yeah,
structured.
yeah,
It's
you
just a
can't
card,
upload it.
some blurb, and you cannot move that data anywhere unless you first put it in a Google Sheet, let's say.
Hmm.
Um, we've had some clients at some point saying, "Hey, can you import this?" At the moment that we were still doing the imports for them, now we have a module and all that, and they're like, "Here, some text from Trello," and I'm like, "No, sorry,
Yeah.
but that's a lot of text from Trello. We cannot do anything with that." But about the future of Salesflare, we are looking. So, as I explained before, we've automated a lot of data. So, as a salesperson, you don't have to do the work anymore of figuring like when did I speak to someone, when did I email, what's their data, or when did they visit my website, click on something. All these kind of things is all mapped. What we believe is that CRM systems are not just customer databases. They should be built around the sales process, and that's mainly communicating. So we're going to build more and more communication features into Salesflare, and more automated communication as well.
Hmm.
So one of the big things we're building now is a thing we're going to call email workflows, and that's gonna be some of the, on the one hand, most automated because the data behind it is automated. That's a big advantage. But also we're gonna have a lot of different triggers and filters and all this kind of things you can use on that data.
Hmm.
So that as a salesperson, you can very nicely make your communication flows. But it's more than just automated. It's just in general streamlining the way salespeople can do their sales follow up in a more productive way. Mostly around communication, but also slight other stuff.
Hmm. Right. So in terms of users, where do you want to be? Maybe right now you've mentioned you have around 2,000. So um, maybe in 2 years, how many users do you want to get in?
No idea. More.
More?
No, we
Definitely.
want to grow significantly. What we're doing right now is looking for good growth channels, because currently we're mostly growing based on word of mouth and some organic growth, and that's not a thing that we will be able to use to become huge
Hmm.
unless we find some crazy growth hack there. I don't know, but we're looking at scalable growth channels,
Hmm.
um, so we can grow faster than we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Um, the exact amount is not super important as long as we can start hitting double digits monthly growth again. Then we're already happy, and anything above that is great.
Hmm. Nice. And so I think also a big part of any CRM is an integration with LinkedIn, because what happens usually, I mean, Trello is one channel, which is awesome, but LinkedIn is a huge channel. And right now in Salesforce and other CRMs as well, there's no way to kind of figure out your touch points on LinkedIn and like who I've messaged, or like I have to copy those messages. So do you have any plans for, I know LinkedIn's API is very restricted, but like, do you have any plans to have some sort of integration with LinkedIn? Because if you could actually tap into that, I think that would be super powerful. So do you have any thoughts on that?
It would be nice, but we cannot open up the LinkedIn API from our side. They need to do it from their side. So if they open up, then we definitely build an integration. But actually, it has started closing, I think, when we started Salesflare. Before it was slightly more open, and it's still closed. And we're still wondering what the plan is with that. Now, of course, that Microsoft bought them, they open it up to Microsoft Dynamics. But let's see whether they will follow a strategy that they follow in other places now, the more open Microsoft. That would be nice. Because indeed, for us and other CRMs, it would be super interesting to be able to connect to that.
Right.
For the data and for the communication that's going on there, all these kind of things, it's all blocked right now. So
it's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. But I think the most important features will be kind of setting up some, I know there are email campaigns in Salesflare, but kind of breaking it down into different kind of, maybe including more kind of dashboard view on that. And also, as you've mentioned, the email workflows and kind of helping salespeople follow up. That is the main, I think, also feature, but that's only my perspective. So, but that's what I would like to see. But I like Salesflare. And yeah, maybe I have just a couple of other questions. Maybe, do you have any favorite entrepreneur or somebody you admire, maybe from like your city or anyone in the world?
I'm reading biographies now and then, and the one I have recently enjoyed a lot, actually, I think the best biography I've read so far was the one of Phil Knight of Nike. That was a great book. It's called Shoe Dog. I don't admire anyone in particular. I think I like to keep a broad view and see there's many people that are doing great things.
Yeah. Is that the latest book you read? The Show Do?
No, I'm currently reading Lost and Founder by Rand Fishkin, and 2 other books, but I'm mainly reading that one.
Got it. And do you have any favorite apps besides Salesflare that you use in your business? It can be anything.
Oh, I have a ton open here. I have like this whole list of pinned tabs. I like obvious ones like Slack and Intercom. GitHub is great as well. Trello, Ahrefs I spend a lot of time in as well. Yeah,
that's
some of the main ones, I guess.
That's a lot of them. And what are you kind of most excited about when it comes to this CRM space? Are there any new technologies on the market or anything happening that you see from your perspective?
What I'm most excited about, we mainly try to build towards where CRM really becomes an AI game. So that's why we spend a lot of time on data and automation. And we see that evolving into AI, because as soon as CRM systems become sort of more sentient software systems, they can start taking away a big part of the sales process that is not human, let's say. Like, salespeople are people who really like human interaction, but they also need to do a lot of stuff that is better done by robots. And I believe that the largest part of the sales process can be taken over by robots, where the salesperson can focus on the the essential thing, which is understanding the customer, talking to them, making a good proposal, bringing value to the table, and all these little things in between are actually unneeded. Like the whole thing where you need to find customers, follow them up, book a meeting with them, all these. There's a huge amount of things you do, like keeping the data about them, tracking them, seeing what they like, all these kind of things, researching them. It's just time that is not necessarily something that the salesperson needs to do. They can just focus on the conversation and on proposing something and all that, and the rest can be taken over.
Right. So my last question is basically a bit of a story. So imagine that you've got a check from like the tax office, and you owe them like everything you have, your house, maybe your money, everything will be freezed. And you have one friend who's a tech entrepreneur, and he doesn't have any sales or marketing background. He's a very tech-oriented guy, and he has this product idea, and he has this big presentation tomorrow with a big client. And if you help him, kind of coach him through how he should present it, he'll give you like a 50% commission on the deal that will help you repay your debt to the tax office. So what would you tell the guy who hasn't been in sales that much, and who in one day, what would you teach him from everything you learned in kind of B2B sales process? What would be like your top 3 things that you would tell this person to, prepare them for the meeting?
And he's trying to sell something, and I'm advising him on how to sell it.
Exactly. You can't go with him. You can just give him like pieces of advice. So maybe some 3 pieces of advice when it comes to the selling in B2B.
I would say sell as little as possible. That's something that I learned also when I was an account manager for the marketing agency. What we did and what I did a lot was listening to the customer, not just throwing something at them that we thought they needed, or proposing something because that's something we had and we needed to get rid of. It's actually listening to them and seeing what it is that they're facing, what it is that they're looking for, all the specifics of how it works and all that, to really understand the issue, advise them on ways that they can change it, and then as late as possible. I don't know whether everyone would agree with me, but like put something in front of them where you say like, okay, so we're gonna help you with that, and it's gonna do that and that and that and that, and what do you think about that? And then make a price. Really like try to advise them more as a friend and a human being than some kind of sales robot that just spams people.
Nice, good. So that was really cool. So where can people check you out, and where do you usually hang out online?
I hang out usually on Facebook. I have a Twitter account as well, but to be honest, I don't do any meaningful things there. You can follow our blog as well. It's where we post a lot of the good content. That's mainly it, I think.
Awesome. So thank you very much, Jeroen, for taking your time and talking about Salesflare and everything you guys are doing. And we'll definitely be in touch in the future. So thank you, and take care.
Thank you.